My name is Justin Azenedo. I work for the Sacramento Public Library. I'm choosing to read It by Stephen King. I'm choosing this because I first read this book when I was about 11 or 12, much younger than any parent would put this book into a child's hands. And it was formative for me for a number of reasons. First of all, it's over 1,000 pages. It's the first book as a child I read that big, and I tore through it. I was absolutely enthralled with it. It led to me reading other books of doorstop size, both sci-fi, everything from sci-fi to Dickens. It also was the first book that had scenes in it that upset me, and it was the first time that I got to think about that in a safe space, think about things like sexuality and violence, and puzzle them through, so that as I got older and read other things, I was equipped with the information I needed, the feelings I had already felt, to kind of deal with it, talk with my parents about it, talk with friends about it. And so I'm going to read a scene from the beginning that to this day, I read this book over and over, still gives me chills. The clown held a bunch of balloons, all colors, like gorgeous ripe fruit in one hand. In the other, he held George's newspaper boat. Want your boat, Georgie? The clown smiled. George smiled back. He couldn't help it. It was the kind of smile you just had to answer. I sure do, he said. The clown laughed. I sure do. That's good. That's very good. And how about a balloon? Well, sure. He reached forward and then drew his hand reluctantly back. I'm not supposed to take stuff from strangers. My dad said so. Very wise of your dad, the clown in Storm Drain said, smiling. How, George wondered, could I have thought his eyes were yellow? They were a bright dancing blue, the color of his mom's eyes, and Bill's. Very wise indeed. Therefore, I will introduce myself. I, Georgie, am Mr. Bob Gray, also known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Pennywise, meet George Denbrough. George, meet Pennywise. And now we know each other. I'm not a stranger to you, and you're not a stranger to me. Correct? George giggled. I guess so. He reached forward again and drew his hand back again. How did you get down there? Storm just blew me away, Pennywise the Dancing Clown said. It blew the whole circus away. Can you smell the circus, Georgie? Georgie leaned forward, and suddenly he could smell peanuts, hot roasted peanuts, and vinegar, the white kind you put on your french fries through a hole in the cap. He could smell cotton candy and frying doughboys, and the faint but thunderous odor of wild animal shit. He could smell the cheery aroma of Midway sawdust. Yet under it all there was the smell of flood, and decomposing leaves and dark storm-drained shadows. The smell was wet and rotten, the cellar smell. But the other smells were stronger. You bet I can smell it, he said. Want your boat, Georgie? Pennywise asked. I only repeat myself because you really do not seem that eager. He held it up, smiling. He was wearing a baggy silk suit with great big orange buttons, a bright tie, electro blue, flopped down his front, and on his hand were big white gloves like the kind Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck always wore. Yes, sure, George said, looking into the storm drain. And a balloon? I've got red and green and yellow and blue. Do they float? Float? The clown's grin widened. Oh, yes, indeed they do. They float. And there's cotton candy. George reached. The clown seized his arm, and George saw the clown's face change.